Can I take a picture of the Milky Way, our galaxy, from here on my rooftop balcony in Tokyo, Japan, one of the most light polluted cities on the planet? And, if you asked me like a couple of months ago, I would have said no. And I would have said no because I've tried and I've tried and I've tried many times. And it's just impossible. And yeah, the reason it's impossible, it's because I'm in a large city. And if you've lived in a large city, you know that if you look up at the stars, well, you don't really see stars. You see like a washed out sky. I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is magnificent. This is my sky, guys. This is my sky. I think there's one star. We can see one star there. Yeah, this is amazing. So if you live like outside of the city, you know how miserable it is to be able to see this super bright, lonely star and nothing else. That is the condition that, I want to take a picture of the Milky Way from, and I'm sure it's impossible, except that maybe it's not. Okay, so how do I know that it might not, be impossible? Well, it's because I saw a blog post recently by a manufacturer of astrophotography stuff called Toptech. It's a Chinese company, and they made a blog post about people in China from very light polluted cities, maybe not quite as light polluted as Tokyo, I don't know, but they were managing to take images of the Milky Way, which sounds fake, right? It sounds completely impossible. The reason is that the Milky Way, our own galaxy, is a super wide area. It's a huge swath of sky that has a surface brightness that is, so dim and spread out through that super wide swath of space that it makes it really hard to capture. And with like really cool telescopes and stuff like that, I can actually capture fairly easily galaxies others than the Milky Way, other than our own, because they're much tighter in the field of view, and so their light is kind of more concentrated. It's not quite absolutely true and physically correct what I'm saying, but I'm able to take picture of other galaxies from here in Tokyo. And in fact, I have, and I'm showing you some on the screen right now. But the Milky Way from here, yeah, I've never been able to do that. So how does this company say that they can achieve that? Well, it's going to be an interesting experiment, and it should be fairly simple at the same time. The way we're going to actually make this work is with this little camera here. This indeed is a camera. It has even a little lens attached to it, and it's normally used for like photographing planets and stuff like that, but we're going to repurpose it to photograph stars and hopefully the Milky Way. And you can see I have it just connected to via USB, and I have it connected via USB towards this little controller thing that I can control via smartphone. And I'll be pointing this camera like that at the sky, not really, thinking too much about it. But I mean, this is pretty basic, right? If I've told you I've tried before and it didn't work, so there's no reason that this camera would be like magic and make it work. And that's right. The camera is not magic. It's just a bog standard astrophotography camera. It has a very light sensitive sensor. It's super cool. The same sensor is used in security cameras that have to be super sensitive in the darkness and stuff like that. That's pretty awesome, but it's not going to be enough. What is going to be making the difference is this little thing here. This little thing here is actually an infrared filter. It doesn't cut infrared. It actually lets infrared pass. It's called even an NIR for near infrared filter. It lets that bandpass of light pass. It's not visible to our eyes, but this particular camera, which is using a sensor called the IMX662 by Sony, is very sensitive to infrared. And so if we tell this camera, like using this filter to ignore every color of the visible human spectrum and just focus or just look at infrared, near infrared to be specific, we're actually going to cut a lot of the Tokyo light pollution, like a lot of it. And we are also going to be able to cut through like kind of dust hanging in the air and that kind of stuff, because infrared and near infrared stuff is actually used by professional telescopes, even stuff like the Hubble telescope, to peer through, or actually the James Webb telescope as well, to peer through galactic dust and stuff like that as well, because infrared light is better at passing through this kind of like hazy type of obstacles than visible light. And so that's where I'm supposed to see the difference. But is that for real? Will I actually see a difference? Let me actually first show you an exposure taken with this camera without any filter, then I'll add the filter and we'll look at the difference. And then if there's enough of a difference, I will try to take, a lot of photos and stack them together in the end to try and see if I can actually see the Milky Way. Let's get at it. Okay, so I have my smartphone out. It's actually connected to the control center of the camera. And what I'm going to do is maybe take, let's say, a 10-second exposure with my camera and see what we see. Basically, what you see on the screen right now is a 5-second exposure. I want to double the exposure time to see what I can get. This is without the near-infrared filter. So this is, kind of, okay, we can see there are some stars, right? We have some stars, and we have more stars than what I'm able to see with the naked eye, which is perfectly normal because our naked eye, you can think of it as kind of a video feed. So it doesn't have 10 seconds for each frame to get all of that sweet, sweet light onto our light sensitive cells in the eye retina. And so, we cannot be as sensitive as a camera that spends 10 seconds on the same target, right? So that's what's happening here. But still, I don't see much Milky Way. Really, the Milky Way should be, I think, around there. So we don't see anything. Let's see if we can add the near-infrared filter on top and see what happens. Okay, I have the infrared filter on top. Let's take another 10-second exposure, see what happens. Okay, and immediately there is a large difference, right? This is a 10-second exposure, right? We didn't do anything more than place the filter and take the exact same amount of time as the exposure. But I can see maybe a trace of stars, maybe Milky Way there. I'm not completely sure, but it looks likely that what we see here might be the Milky Way. Let me take, let's say, a 60-second exposure, see whether we see some more details. So let's try that. Okay, we have the result of a 60-second exposure. This is what it looks like, and yeah, definitely I can see something, I believe, around here. And we definitely see more stars than without the near-infrared filter, so I really want to check what this is, and so I'm going to take a lot of exposures with this filter and then stack them together. If I zoom in, you can see that with 60 seconds, we have some star trailing, and I kind of want to avoid that. Star trailing happens because the Earth rotates, right, as we speak, obviously, and so yeah, we want to avoid the trailing. So maybe I'll limit my exposures to 20 seconds. So with this kind of control center, it's super easy. You can go and say like, okay, I want to take those images. And I was going to say like 20 seconds, right? So we want to take 20-second exposures. There's 3 for 1 minute, right? And I want, let's say, 1 hour, something like that. So 180 such exposures would be nice. So I'm going to say, yeah, we're going to take 180 exposures like that and see what happens. Right, so let's try that. So I'm going to tell this little thing to run through my plan, which is 180 exposures of 20 seconds each. I'm going to start it, and we'll see what we'll be able to get. I'll show you the results of each of the individual frames on my computer, but also after we stack them, basically take the power of all of those 20-second exposures and smash them together so that we could have something as if we had had a single 1 hour long exposure. Let's see what we get. Okay, I have my 1 hour worth of 20-second exposures. What did we get? Did I manage to get a picture of the Milky Way in Tokyo? And does it look like anything decent? Well, let's have a look. First, this is what a single exposure looks like from these 20-second exposures. And you can see that indeed right there, like there is definitely the Milky Way visible there. If you're not familiar with it, like if you see this kind of weirdish nebulosity between the stars, that's the Milky Way. And if you ever go to a suburban type of area, you should be able to see it if there's no full moon, right? And you look up and you might see some kind of like weirdly fuzzy kind of area in the sky. And that's it. And as a little bonus here, you can see there's this little weird fuzzy thing there, like a star with some kind of fuzzy stuff around it. That's actually another galaxy. So this huge thing here is our own galaxy. This little tiny thing here, it's called the Andromeda galaxy. It's a sister galaxy of ours. It's huge, it's amazing, and I've taken pictures of it like with telescopes, but it's kind of fun to see that we're able to capture it. And if I scroll through all of these exposures that I've taken, you can see really the effect of the Earth rotating on itself, right? We can see here, by the way, if you see this weird tiny shape there, that's actually the Pleiades, called Subaru in Japanese, and therefore the car brand Subaru with its stars as the logo is actually for this little star asterism. It's beautiful when you take images of it with your telescope. I've done so from Tokyo as well. I'll put the image on the screen because they are surrounded by interstellar dust, effectively, and the dust reflects the light from the stars, and the stars are blue, so it's a magnificent blue thing. And we can keep going, we can keep going, we can keep going, and you can see how quickly, this is only across 1 hour. We don't realize how quickly the Earth rotates until you see that. Even I am kind of like, I'm used to that, and I kind of feel like amazed at how much this has moved in 1 hour. So this is the last frame, and this is the first frame. So the Pleiades there are barely there at first, and after just 1 hour, they've moved already so much away from my roof there. I think that's pretty cool, right? I mean, I'm easy to impress, but I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, now what can we do about those images? How can we make them better? Well, we can use some software, and I'm actually in this software. This is a free piece of software called Deep Sky Stacker. And if you're ever interested, I'll put the link down in the description. And you're able to take all of those images, and basically what Deep Sky Stacker will do is that it will identify stars in there. Maybe it will identify this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy, and this guy, and maybe that guy as well, for instance. I'm simplifying stuff, but it does that in every single image. And then it tries to basically shift the images and even rotate them a little bit against one another until those stars, they match perfectly. And therefore we're able to take into account the rotation of the Earth and just like counter this rotation via this stacking. It's kind of pretty cool, actually. Oh, and by the way, you've noticed as I was going through all of those images is that everything is black and white, right? Those guys here are the lights from an airplane. They should be colored. This is black and white. There's a reason for that. First, I'm using a monochrome camera, so the camera is not able to perceive colors in the first place. But even if it were, it would still look black and white because we're using near infrared. And what's very interesting with color cameras is that the way that they achieve color is that there's a tiny little filter on each pixel. So one pixel will be measuring red, a couple of others will be measuring green, and then another one will be measuring blue. And they do that by having a tiny little filter on top of each. And then when you want to know the real color of one pixel, you need to kind of look at all of the pixels in the same area, mix all of the colors together and deduce like, yeah, this pixel was this color. It's a process called debayering, and that matrix of filters is called a Bayer matrix that's on top of your sensor. What's very interesting is that those red, green, and blue filters, they effectively become transparent when the wavelengths go beyond the visible wavelengths, so above a wavelength of 700 nanometers, everything becomes transparent, and so a color camera starts to act as a monochrome camera, and that's fascinating stuff. And by the way, if you take like a standard DSLR off the shelf, right, this is not going to work because DSLRs, they have a specific filter that makes sure that near infrared and infrared in general, even deep red that is more or less visible to our eyes, is not going to be let through to the sensor. There's a filter on top of your sensor. So you would never be able to get that with a standard DSLR because the DSLR intentionally removes all of these frequency, because otherwise you'd get like a very reddish image and you'd lose contrast in your colors because you'd have a whole range of infrared that ignores all of your color filters, and it's a big mess in that case. So that's why DSLRs do that, whereas my camera is a astrophotography camera, so it does not have this type of filter. Let's keep going. And if you're interested in seeing the result, this is actually the result of the stacking. You can see that because we've aligned on the stars and we've stacked everything, my rooftop here is completely like blurry and stuff, because the stars, if we make them fixed, then in comparison, the rooftop moves, right? And same for my telescope, plus it moved in the middle, so it's like this is my telescope and it's kind of a blurry shadow because of this reason. But what we can see is from this image immediately we can see that the Milky Way is even more visible, and even the Andromeda galaxy here is even more visible. Something that might be weird at first glance is that the Pleiades there, as well as this whole area there, is completely blurry as well. And this is actually a phenomenon called field rotation. If you take images, wide field images like that across 1 hour, not only do the shapes move kind of like from this top left corner to the bottom right corner, but at the same time they rotate a little bit. If you ever look in the sky at the, let's say, the beginning of the evening, you might see towards the north a constellation called Cassiopeia that looks like a W, and at the end of the night it will look like an M. So it has rotated together with the other stars, and so that rotation is expressed here as those star trails on the side. But fortunately, because the Milky Way itself was more or less centered, it's not so much affected by that phenomenon. And again, I find this pretty cool. This is all simple geometry based on the Earth being a globe that rotates. And I love that we're able to just see that. And by the way, if you're a flat earther, let me know down in the comments how you explain that. Sorry. Yeah, and based on that, obviously, like I took all of those images, and those black areas there are basically where we weren't able to cover anything. But first thing I need to do is crop all of that, right, to get something a bit better on the Milky Way there. And then I ran some software to tighten the stars. So you can see the stars are much like tighter than before. This is before, this is after. Much better visibility of those stars. Okay, so now what I want to do is really tighten our crop onto the Milky Way and maybe this tiny galaxy here, which is huge actually, but M31, right? We can try to crop like that, and that's what I did. And we do have some corners with no data, those two guys there, but you can see there's the Milky Way there is definitely very visible, the Andromeda galaxy. And I think that overall, it's amazing that we were able to get that from Tokyo. One of the things I like as well is that we see almost like one of those dark lanes in the Milky Way. And just to show you how this is supposed to look, if you're living in a non-light polluted area, it would look something like this. This is in an area where you have actual dark skies, so maybe a national park in the United States, something like that. I did not take this picture. It's amazing. And if you're in a very dark area, you can actually take this in a single shot. No filter needed, you just point and shoot. And it's very sad to me that we've lost the access to that. If I want to have access to such dark skies in Japan, I don't have access to such beautiful skies here. Maybe in Hokkaido, but not great. If you're in the United States or in Europe, it's much easier, especially the United States, and especially if you're on the west half of the United States, you have access to so many amazing dark sites. There's an association called Dark Sky International, and they have a map of like official kind of international dark sky places that are kind of like protected with, you know, making sure that they stay dark. And obviously the area with the most of those dark sites is going to be the western side of the United States. I've camped in the past in Death Valley National Park, and I vividly remember looking at the Milky Way and seeing that the Milky Way, just stars, there was no moon. There was just the Milky Way in the sky. The Milky Way was casting shadows, like very diffuse shadows, but shadow nonetheless. It was absolutely magical. And I hope that we can keep protecting such dark skies area, because it's a shame that I have to jump through so many hoops in Tokyo to get a picture like that. I can't even see that with my naked eyes. And it's not a beautiful picture by any means of the imagination, but it's possible. And I love that. And I'm going to count that as a success. So yes, we were able to take a picture of the Milky Way from Tokyo. The picture itself is nothing to write home about, but it's there. So there you go. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. Have you tried something that's crazy? before. I'll put a link to the camera that I use and maybe the filter as well, and basically the equipment that I use to take this picture, but I would not recommend buying this just to take this kind of picture. It's a one-time thing. It's super cool, but I wouldn't be doing that like every evening, unless you absolutely want to. I mean, feel free. The good thing though is that if you ever get started in deep sky astrophotography with a telescope and stuff, that camera is excellent for doing an operation called auto-guiding that basically guides your main telescope and main camera to make sure they track the stars very carefully and very accurately. So it can be reused, and the near-infrared filter is actually also great for auto-guiding because the stars in infrared tend to be less affected by our atmosphere, and that actually helps with this kind of operation. So yeah, just in case, if you're ever interested, I'll put the links below. But again, I'd love to see below your comments. Let me know what you think. Like the video if you liked it. And of course, thank you so much for watching till the end, because that's all that YouTube looks at these days. And if you want to support the channel at no cost to you, and you're planning on buying anything from Amazon, Gina, High Point Scientific, etc., if you do so after clicking one of the links that I have down below, it will help me out at no cost to you. And if you want to help even more and become a sponsor of the channel, you can join my Patreon as a Patreon member. Some of my Patreon ranks have access to my videos early and without ads, and the link is down in the description. You can also join the channel as a member, and you guys, you know it, you make all of this possible. Thank you so much for sponsoring this adventure here on this channel. With that, I hope this was fun. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, whenever you can, to look up at the stars, and maybe go to a dark sky site to look up at the stars, because it's amazing. And I'll see you next time.